Welcome to our channel. We are Technic Force and we help grow your business online. Please hit the subscribe button to get more updates. Google Consent Mode V2. Everything you need to know. Hey there and welcome to Technic Force. In this video, I wanted to cover a very trending topic in marketing right now, which is Google Consent Mode V2. Just last month, Google announced that in order to comply with the Digital Markets Act, they need to change and update the way that Google Consent Mode works and the way that they gather and share the user consent data within their products such as Google Analytics and Google Ads. So of course, this sparked a lot of conversations on LinkedIn, but also raised a lot of confusion. And with the tight deadline being March 2024, people are kind of scrambling to get this set up to make sure that their Google Ads campaigns and performance is not affected. In this video, I also wanted to go over with Google Consent Mode. What's changed since version 1, how does it affect marketers and your Google Ads accounts? And what are the next realistic steps for your situation or business? So Google Consent Mode is kind of an addition to your existing cookie banner or cookie management platform. It's not cookie consent on its own. It's just an additional way that Google can receive information that lets us see whether somebody has consented, whether they can be included in remarketing, in specific ad personalization, for example. So it's an addition to your cookie consent. So in order to comply with this in the first place, you need to make sure that you have a cookie banner or cookie consent management platform. And on top of that, then you need to implement that Google Consent Mode V2. So the V1 has actually been in beta since about 2020. So there are some websites that already had Consent Mode implemented. And this has mainly been helpful for Google Analytics, where if the user hasn't accepted cookies, it was a way for you to get additional information through Google's modeling, which I will go over in a little bit as well. And the way that it works is you have a cookie banner on your website. The user who visits your website, if they're from the EU, they should be presented with a cookie banner. Then they have a choice to either accept the cookies or decline the cookies. They can also make a choice for specific types of cookies such as analytics, marketing, essential, etc. So if a user accepts cookies on your website, what's supposed to happen is only then the scripts are allowed to fire. So until they have consented, no script should be firing. So for example, Google Ads Conversions GA4 script. And once they do accept either marketing or analytics or both types of cookies, then these scripts are allowed to fire and start cracking. If the user declines cookies, theoretically, none of the scripts should run. They should be blocked. And the way that Google Consent Mode is supposed to help with this is that if the user declines the cookies, the scripts are blocked. But Google still receives some information, such as about the user's device, from which they can deduce and use their algorithms to predict or estimate whether a conversion should have happened. So this has actually been in place for a lot of GA4 properties. And you will see this in your GA4 reports. It will say data has been modeled since date. So that means that your data has already been supplemented with additional information based on Google's modeling algorithm to help you estimate or predict additional conversions which are not captured when the user declines. So with version 2, the main difference without getting too technical is that they have had to add new parameters to their already existing ad storage parameter. So the ad storage parameter is what's related to the marketing cookies when somebody accepts it on your website. And now with Consent Mode V2, it basically allows to send an additional 2 parameters. One is called Ad User Data, and the other one is called Ad Personalization. So this is supposed to let Google know whether somebody wants their ads to be personalized, whether they can be used in remarketing lists, and some other things that are important for Google Ads campaigns. The main difference for marketers specifically is that with version 2 is actually a requirement. It's not really an option how Consent Mode V1 was. So Consent Mode V1 was mainly useful for GA4. But with Consent Mode V2, there's no more option of implementing it. They're making this a requirement for you to be able to even use Google Ads in the first place. So the main confusion that I've seen on LinkedIn is all around this whole basic versus advanced implementation. Consent Mode V2 essentially comes in 2 flavors. There is the basic implementation and the advanced implementation. So the basic implementation sounds a bit counterintuitive because it's actually a bit more work. So it's a bit more setup and it's a bit more restrictive, let's say. And the advanced implementation is the one that gives you the additional model data from Google. So the advanced implementation actually works the same way as the original Consent Mode V1, where anonymous pings are sent to Google. And you'll hear many different names for this. You'll hear cookie list pings, anonymous pings. What it essentially means is that as opposed to usually when there is consent being granted, Google will set the cookies in your user's browser. So for example, with GA4, that's the GA cookie where they're storing the information for that browser in order to track the user across several sessions. What cookie list means is that they do not set that cookie, but they're still definitely able to get the information of the actual device. So they're still getting a lot of information and a lot even about the session itself, even though the user has not consented. But this basically allows you to access the advanced modeling features for conversions. And whereas before this mainly affected GA4, this now actually has an impact on Google Ads as well. With the basic implementation, you're essentially required to set up additional consent checks on top of the built-in consent you have in your Google Tag Manager tags, which would essentially completely block Google scripts from running. So even the anonymous pings, Google would not receive those, so any script would be entirely blocked. Of course, as marketers, we would want to have as much data as possible for our campaigns. But there are definitely some trade-offs, especially if you have a legal department in your company, and you will definitely need to have a conversation with them. So this is a great table to kind of explain the benefits and trade-offs between the two types of implementation. As I mentioned, with the advanced implementation, the Google tags are actually loaded before the consent dialog ever appears. So the tag is there and it's loaded and it's getting the information from the browser or the user. And when the consent is declined, it sends that cookie list information back to Google. If it's accepted, it just carries on as normal. So with this advanced implementation, you will get access to behavioral modeling in GA4 and conversion modeling both in GA4 and Google Ads. With the basic implementation, you can see that the Google tags are completely blocked until consent is granted. So people who have not granted consent, their data is not collected. So you will not see behavioral modeling in GA4, but they do say that for conversion modeling in both GA4 and Google Ads, they use a general model. So not based on the information that they receive, based on the time of the day, on your other conversions that you've received in your account, like browser type, conversion action type. So non-identifying variables. And in terms of remarketing, you actually get access to remarketing in both implementations. So this is also another point of confusion that I've seen. And the only difference is that with the basic implementation, you will of course see a much smaller sample for your remarketing audiences that you would with the advanced implementation, which would supplement a bit of that data. So now I want to dive a bit deeper into modeling and how exactly does it work with unconsented conversions in Google Ads specifically. So Google Ads, just as GA4, really heavily relies on cookies in order to track conversions and most importantly, be able to attribute them to specific ad clicks. So when users do not provide their consent, it is quite a big problem for Google Ads to not receive these conversions. Because also as an advertiser, that means that your CPA is higher if there's less conversions that are being tracked. That means the algorithm can optimize as well. So to kind of account for these missing conversions, Google created this alternative method, which they're calling conversion modeling. Modeling is only activated in the advanced implementation, but as we saw in the table earlier, there is technically modeling based on general models for the basic implementation as well. And there is quite a nice graphic from Google here, which basically breaks down how exactly the conversions will be modeled for unconsented users. So if you have 1,000 clicks, let's say 500 of these were consented, 500 were unconsented. If they're consented, all good. They're recorded as normal. If they're unconsented, they're modeled, so not observed. And the modeled conversion rate is actually a lot lower. So they're kind of giving you an estimate. And they're also reducing the conversion rate from unconsented users is like 2 to 4 times lower than consented. So that basically drives the decreased conversion rate. Let's say in truth, there were 12. So it's actually saying that it will be undercounting instead of overcounting. So it will be underestimating. And these 9 unconsented conversions will be included in your total conversion count in your Google Ads reporting. So what they're saying here is that a conversion rate without consent mode would have been 5%. With consent mode, 5.9%. So we have an 18% conversion uplift. So an 18 conversion uplift is great, but of course, that is at the cost of your users technically not consenting to their information being collected by Google. So it's not always an acceptable choice for businesses because it's still not clear what exactly is the data that they're capturing. What is included in these pings? The fact that a script runs before the banner even pops up is concerning enough. So some businesses will definitely need to consult their legal teams and assess, as I said, the tolerance levels between the two. So what happens if you're using Google Ads and you don't implement Google Consent Mode? Without Google Consent Mode V2, Google can receive these additional parameters that I mentioned earlier to ensure that compliance. So this is really a requirement from Google's side. It's really unclear at this point what's going to happen, but they did update their EU user consent policy, which now states that they may limit or suspend your use of Google products and or terminate your agreement. So you could risk losing your Google Ads account, or Google could send you a lot of warnings, or maybe additional time to implement Consent Mode V2. But since it's something that they need in order to comply with the regulations, it's definitely something that they're going to be chasing every single advertiser about. How do you actually implement Google Consent Mode V2 on your website? So the first thing you should do is go to consent.anyway.com. The reason why you should do this first is if you already have a consent management platform and you have a cookie banner on your website, it's very likely that the cookie provider that you're using could have already enabled Consent Mode V2 automatically. So for example, CookieBot does this automatically. You'll receive some information about your cookie provider and also if Google Consent Mode is active. So if you use the consent checker on anyway.com and you find out that Google Consent Mode V2 has been detected and you want to use advanced implementation, there's nothing else to do. If you use the checker and you find that Consent Mode V2 has not been implemented on your website, then it fully depends on the kind of cookie provider that you're using and how to implement Consent Mode V2. But if you want to go ahead with the basic implementation, there's a bit more setup as I mentioned. So for example, I would go to Google Tag Manager. The first thing you will need to do is go to your admin and then your container settings and enable Consent Overview. Then the second thing you will need to do is for every single one of your tags, you will now see in the text section the Consent Overview button. And for every single one of your tags, you will need to define an additional consent parameter. So for example, this one is doing the advanced implementation and it doesn't have any Google Ads tags, but a set of all J4 tags as requiring no additional consent. So it's only using the built-in consent, which means that it's going to use the advanced implementation. For the basic implementation, which is the restricted one, you're actually going to need to add additional consent here. So for example, let's select these two events. Let's manage the consent and then say that we require additional consent for this tag. For Google Ads, that additional content would be ad storage. For analytics, that would be analytics storage. And then once you save it, it will update these tags to require additional consent, which means that tags cannot fire until somebody has granted that analytics consent. If you don't have Google Tag Manager or you have a custom cookie banner, then this implementation is a bit more difficult. There's quite a few resources on developers.google.com. So it means that you would need a developer to help you with this. If you don't have one, then I would heavily recommend just getting a consent management platform and managing everything through Google Tag Manager. But otherwise, your developers should be able to help implement this based on the documentation provided by Google. So that brings us to the end of the video. I hope you learned something and feel more confident about Google Consent Mode V2. Please don't forget to like and share the video so that others can find it and subscribe for more marketing tips. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Before we end this video, let me introduce to you the CourseFunnels, online courses platform with integrated marketing. Host anywhere, supports 17 languages, 6 profit-boosting plugins included, made to sell and get you profits. Just don't make courses, sell them and turn them into profits. Build your course sales pages and entire funnels all within CourseFunnels. Grab opt-in leads and deliver your courses instantly. Get paid using any payment system you want. Includes profit and conversion boosting plugins that save hundreds a month. Integrates every popular payment system, CRM and autoresponder. Rich interaction with inbuilt comments, review and questions inbuilt. Integrations for live chat, Facebook Messenger, bots, support desk, conversion proof, etc. and a lot more. So what are you waiting for? Get CourseFunnels now. Just go to getcoursefunnels.in. I hope you find this video helpful, and thanks for watching.